I transmigrated into a novel, becoming the official wife of the main villain. A title that sounded impressive at first glance. On the surface, I maintained my cold, aloof demeanor, my sharp gaze, and my untouchable, icy, goddess-like appearance. But deep down, I was screaming, "Oh my God, how could this man be so unreasonably handsome?" Every frown, every unconscious movement of his made me want to get closer, just to confirm that I wasn't dreaming. Even seeing the adorable child in the house almost melted my heart. I just wanted to hug it immediately. But the most terrifying thing was, all those secret thoughts were clearly audible to my husband's family. I was completely unaware of this. I continued to walk with my haughty gait across the cold marble floor, while behind me, Shen Linzhou nearly choked on his drink, and Shen Junyan was struggling to suppress his laughter, his face turning bright red. To them, my inner voice was like an unstoppable live radio broadcast. Back in my room, I sprawled on the bed, feeling smug. This transmigration into a book was truly a bargain. A handsome husband, a wealthy family, well-behaved children, and no need to endure the pain of childbirth. A dream life anyone would want. I changed into a seductive nightgown, sprayed on some perfume, and waited for the big boss to appear. But I waited and waited, until my eyelids grew heavy, and I drifted off to sleep without realizing it. The sound of running water woke me from my dream. When I opened my eyes, I saw Shen Linzhou stepping out of the bathroom, wrapped only in a white towel. Drops of water dripped from his wet black hair, sliding down his toned body, creating a scene that almost suffocated me. My heart pounded. My throat was dry, and I could only swallow hard. My mind a chaotic mess like a drum beating. If this scene wasn't fast-forwarded, I would surely die on the spot. Perhaps he'd noticed something. His movements as he wiped his hair slowed, his gaze sweeping over me. And at that very moment, a warm sensation rushed from my nose, leaving me speechless. I was really having a nosebleed. Embarrassed to the point of wanting to crawl into a hole, I quickly jumped up, but before I could run away, he pulled me back. He calmly put cotton in my nose, his voice nonchalant. "The weather is dry." I tried to remain calm, gently pushing his hand away, but my heart was dancing the tango. Every emotion was amplified to the extreme. When he leaned closer, lightly inhaling the scent on my neck, I became even more flustered. I tried your perfume," I mumbled. His eyes narrowed slightly, his voice deepening with a hint of warning. In the original novel, Shen Linzhou is a cold, ruthless villain whose heart belongs only to his white moonlight, the female protagonist Lin Shi. As for me, I was just a wife in name, always causing trouble, making my son resentful, and creating chaos in the family. But now, I've replaced the original owner. I don't want to follow that tragic path. I want to live a comfortable life, enjoying everything. However, while I was still dreaming of the life of a wealthy lady, the cold system appeared, pulling me back to reality. I was forced to complete the mission of a wicked female antagonist, or I would be punished. And at that moment, the butler knocked on the door, announcing that the evening gown was ready. Outwardly, I calmly nodded, but inwardly I groaned. How could I possibly endure that suffocatingly tight dress? When Shen Linzhou coldly said, "If you don't like it, then don't go," I almost jumped for joy. But the system immediately warned. Tonight, I had to complete an important mission at the party. That night, under the dazzling lights of the party, I met Lin Shi. She was so beautiful that she seemed to dim the light around her. Her skin was as white as porcelain, her smile gentle yet captivating. Standing before her, I suddenly understood why Shen Linzhou couldn't forget her. According to the script, I was supposed to deliberately spill wine on her. But when I saw her, I hesitated. If I did, would I be pushing myself back down the same path? But if I didn't, the system wouldn't forgive me. While I was still in this state of confusion, an unexpected collision occurred. The glass of wine in my hand spilled directly onto Lin Shi. The atmosphere froze for a moment. When I looked up, Shen Linzhou's cold gaze fell upon me like a sharp blade. In that moment, I knew. Everything was spiraling out of control. I stood frozen in the brightly lit hall, still holding the empty glass, my heart pounding like a drum. The red wine stained Lin Shi's white dress, seeping in like a wound that was widening. She trembled slightly, her eyes glistening with tears, so vulnerable and pitiful that anyone would want to protect her. Before I could even open my mouth to explain, Shen Linzhou's vest was draped over her shoulders, a decisive and caring gesture. All I received was an icy stare, sharp enough to cut through any justification. The atmosphere around us became suffocating. Scrutinizing glances and hushed whispers spread like an undercurrent. I knew that in everyone's eyes, I was now a jealous, petty, and cruel person. According to the script, I should have stood there, arrogant and nonchalant, as if everything was part of the plan. But inside, I just wanted to bury my head in my hands and scream. This wasn't my doing. It was an accident. When Shen Linzhou turned and left with Lin Shi, I stood alone in the vast hall. The crystal chandeliers cast long shadows of me on the stone floor, strangely lonely. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure, but my mind was already calculating everything. If he doesn't come home tonight, won't I get to sleep alone? Thinking about that, I almost burst out laughing. But that joy was extinguished before it could fully blossom. Shen Linzhou suddenly stopped, turned around, his gaze piercing straight into me. Just a second later, he stepped back, stopping in front of me. "Go home," he said curtly. I was stunned, completely bewildered. Shouldn't he be staying with the female lead? The silence in the car was eerily oppressive. I huddled in the back seat, trying not to make a sound. But my mind was racing. I remembered the braised pork trotters in soy sauce from the night market, my mouth watering. I wondered if they still sold it. Thinking about it, I unconsciously swallowed hard. "Uncle Yang, stop the car!" Shen Linzhou's voice interrupted my thoughts. I jumped, my heart nearly leaping out of my chest. The car stopped beside a bustling night market, the warm yellow lights illuminating the air, the aroma of food filling the air. Before I could understand what was happening, he opened the door and pulled me out. Just a few minutes later, I was sitting in front of a small stall, a steaming bowl of fragrant pork trotters before me. I looked at it as if I had found the love of my life. Taking a bite, the rich sauce melted in my mouth. The meat tender but not mushy, fatty but not greasy. I almost cried with happiness. Shen Linzhou stood opposite me, watching me eat with relish. His gaze was no longer as cold as it had been at the party, but seemed to soften slightly. When I unconsciously licked my lips, he gently wiped away the sauce from the corner of my mouth. The gesture was so natural that it stunned me. "You like it that much?" he asked. I nodded repeatedly, completely forgetting my image. For a fleeting moment, the corners of his lips curved up slightly, like a brief smile. Back home, the atmosphere changed again. Shen Junian sat in the living room, quietly doing his homework, not even glancing at me. I knew he was still angry. Without thinking much, I immediately offered him a piece of pork knuckle. "Try it. It's delicious." He frowned and turned his head away. "I won't eat it." His voice was childish but firm. I paused, a pang of bitterness in my heart. This child, who should have received more love, instead grew up in coldness and misunderstanding. "Apologize to your mother." Shen Linzhou's voice rang out from behind, low but carrying pressure. Shen Junyan bit his lip, saying nothing. The tense atmosphere lasted for a few seconds. Then he scooped the child up and carried him back to his room. I sat alone on the sofa, sighing. This life in the wealthy family, it seems, isn't as simple as I thought. But then my phone vibrated. A message appeared. The investigation documents had been sent. I opened it and immediately froze. That was all the information about Lin Shi. Secrets, hidden aspects that no one knew. The original owner had hired someone to investigate her. My hands trembled, and before I could think, the system sounded. "New mission. Use this information to ruin her reputation." I swallowed, a chill running down my spine. If I did it, I would become exactly the kind of person I hated most. But if I didn't? "Jiang Wan." The voice behind me startled me. I quickly turned off the screen, but it was too late. Shenlin Zhou bent down to pick up the phone, his eyes fixed on the messages. The atmosphere froze. I rushed forward, hugging his waist tightly, my voice trembling. I was wrong. I was afraid of losing you. As soon as I finished speaking, I regretted it. But surprisingly, he didn't get angry. On the contrary, he, softly, "Jealous?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. I looked up at him, my heart pounding. In that moment, I realized something was changing. Not just the plot, but my own feelings too. I froze in his arms, my mind blank for a few seconds. This situation was completely outside the script I knew. According to the original story, he should have coldly pushed me away, warned me, and then turned to protect the female protagonist. But now, I was the one in the vulnerable position, while he seemed to be in complete control. His gaze was no longer simply cold, but held something deeper, more unpredictable, making me both afraid and unable to look away. "No, it's not jealousy," I mumbled in protest, but my voice lacked confidence to the point I couldn't believe it myself. My mind was still in turmoil, wondering if I was unintentionally straying from the safe path. But the system remained strangely silent, offering no warnings, no reminders, as if observing everything unfolding. Shenlin Zhou leaned down slightly, the distance between us so close I could feel his warm breath against my skin. "So how do you explain this?" He gently shook the phone in his hand, the screen still lit, clearly displaying those terrifying messages. I swallowed, my throat dry, my mind racing, trying to find a way to escape. "Have breakfast," I said softly, trying to sound natural. It didn't respond, but it didn't leave either. At least that was a good sign. I smiled, placing another slice of bread in front of it. "This is delicious. Try it." This time it hesitated for a moment, then slowly picked it up. At that moment, an indescribable warmth welled up inside me. Perhaps there was still a chance for things to change. But just as I relaxed, the system's cold voice suddenly rang in my head. "Warning! Host is deviating from the plot line. The next mission will be activated." I froze, the smile on my lips stiffening. I knew it. Things couldn't be that simple. 1. Approach the male protagonist. 2. Sabotage the relationship between the male and female protagonists. 3. Collect confidential information from the Shen group. I clenched my fists under the table, my heart pounding. These missions, each one dangerous. I glanced at Shenlin Zhou sitting opposite me. His expression was as calm as ever, but for some reason I had a feeling. He wasn't as simple as he seemed. This game, perhaps, had only just begun. I lowered my head, pretending to focus on the glass of milk in front of me to hide the rising panic. The missions the system had just assigned were not only dangerous, but also felt like a knife hanging over my head. Approaching the male protagonist, sabotaging their relationship, and then obtaining confidential information from the Shen group. Any wrong move could send me into an abyss. But what was even more terrifying was that I was beginning to hesitate. Not because I was afraid of the system, but because I didn't want to hurt the person sitting in front of me. Shenlin Zhou gently set down his coffee cup, the sound soft, but enough to bring me back to reality. "Do you have any plans today?" he asked, his voice calm as if nothing had happened. I looked up, our eyes met, and my heart suddenly trembled. Was he testing me? Or was it simply a normal question? I was just going out for a bit," I replied, trying to keep my voice natural. In my head, I was already calculating. If I had to approach the male lead, then I couldn't avoid him forever. Sooner or later, I would have to face him. It was better to be proactive than to be forced into a disadvantageous situation. He looked at me for another second, then nodded slightly. "Okay." No further questions, no doubt. His attitude only increased my unease. Could someone like him truly be so indifferent? Leaving the house, I stood before the main gate for a long time, taking several deep breaths to calm myself. The morning sunlight shone down, warm but unable to dispel the chill in my heart. I opened my phone and looked at the address the system provided, a luxurious cafe in the city center. There, I would meet the male lead, Gu Yan Chen. As I entered the cafe, I immediately recognized him. No introduction was needed. His aura stood out from the crowd. A man with a calm demeanor, his deep eyes seemingly able to see through people's hearts. I slowly approached, my heart beating faster with each step. "Mr. Gu," I said, pulling up a chair and sitting down opposite him. He looked up, his gaze sweeping over me, a faint but meaningful smile playing on his lips. "Ms.
Shen taking the initiative to seek me out is quite rare."
I subtly tightened my grip under the table, trying to remain calm. I just wanted to talk a little about the project in the east of the city. The moment I said it, I felt uneasy. This reason seemed too forced. Sure enough, Gu Yenshin tilted his head slightly, his gaze sharper. "Or do you have another purpose?" He spoke slowly, each word piercing my mind. I froze, my thoughts in turmoil. This man was far more dangerous than I imagined. Before I could think of an answer, the cafe door was suddenly pushed open. A familiar figure entered, radiating an icy aura that seemed to lower the temperature. I turned around, my heart sinking. "Shenlin Zhou." He said nothing, simply walking straight towards us. Each step was steady, his gaze fixed on me. I felt my whole body stiffen, frozen in place. It's over. This time it's really over. But what surprised me was, he didn't get angry. He didn't question me. He didn't make a fuss like I expected. He simply stopped beside me, naturally putting his arm around my waist. "My dear wife, are you finished talking?" His voice was low, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. I was stunned, completely unable to react. Gu Yanshen watched this, a slight smile playing on his lips, as if he were watching an interesting play. "Mr. Shen arrived at just the right time," he said, his voice full of meaning. "I wouldn't dare," Shen Linzhou replied, his eyes icy cold. "I just don't like people touching what's mine." His words were gentle, yet carried a clear possessiveness that instantly made the atmosphere tense. I stood between them, feeling like I was caught in an invisible battle. On one side was the dangerous male protagonist, on the other an unpredictable villain, and I was just a pawn trying to escape the chessboard. Finally, Shen Linzhou pulled me to my feet. "Let's go." He didn't give me a chance to resist, directly leading me out of the restaurant. I followed him, my head still spinning. In the car, I didn't dare say anything, but my heart was racing. Why did he appear at that exact moment? Was it a coincidence? Or did he know beforehand? "Next time," his voice broke the silence, "tell me if you want to see someone." I froze, turning to look at him. His gaze remained fixed straight ahead, but I could sense the seriousness in his words. I didn't reply. But a growing question arose in my mind. This man, how much did he really know? I sat silently in the passenger seat, my hands clasped together, my eyes quietly following the road ahead. Tall buildings flashed past the window, reflecting the dazzling sunlight, but my heart felt strangely cold. Shen Linzhou's words weren't a warning, nor were they exactly concern, but rather an affirmation that he could control every action I took. The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. "Are you spying on me?" I finally couldn't help but ask. My voice was low, but enough to break the heavy atmosphere in the car. He didn't turn around, only slightly raised his eyebrows. "Do you think so?" The answer was vague, but it only confused me further. If he wasn't being followed, then how could he have appeared at such a precise moment? Or was it all just a coincidence? I bit my lip, not asking any more questions. My intuition told me that asking further wouldn't give me the answer I wanted. This man, from beginning to end, was like a thin mist, close at first glance, yet untouchable. The car stopped in front of the Shen Group building. Before I could react, he opened the door and stepped out, walking around to my side. The door opened and light flooded in, making me squint. "Get out," he said, his voice calm. Do I have to go in too?" I asked. The system's plan required me to access confidential information, but I hadn't expected to be taken directly to such an important place. "You are my wife," he replied curtly. "No need to be secretive." That statement made my heart flutter. No need to be secretive. Yet I was carrying a secret I couldn't reveal. The conflicting feelings made me slow my pace. Inside the building, everything exuded luxury and power. Staff bowed when they saw us, their eyes filled with a mixture of respect and curiosity. I tried to maintain my composure, following him into the private elevator. The enclosed space only increased my tension. "There's a meeting this afternoon," he suddenly said. "You can stay or go home." His voice was gentle, as if he were giving me a choice. But I knew this wasn't just a simple choice. If I stayed, I'd have a chance to access what the system required. If I left,
I'd be temporarily safe.
but the mission would still hang in the balance. "I'll stay," I said, almost without thinking. The moment the words left my lips, I felt my heart race. He didn't react particularly, just nodded slightly. But I sensed a fleeting, inexplicable glint in his eyes. When the elevator doors opened, we stepped onto the top floor, the chairman's private office. The space was vast and so quiet you could hear every step. Standing in that luxurious room, I felt strangely small.
"Make yourself at home,"
he said, then walked toward his desk. I nodded, but inwardly I felt anything but at ease. A while later, when he left the room for a meeting, I finally breathed a the opportunity had arrived. I walked slowly toward his desk. Each step felt heavy, as if carrying an invisible pressure. I opened the first drawer, just ordinary documents. The second, nothing special either. My hands began to tremble. "I have to hurry," I muttered. If I were discovered, I didn't know what I'd face. Finally, in the third drawer, I saw a small black USB drive. My heart immediately pounded. Perhaps this was what I needed. I reached out and took it. In that moment, a feeling of unease welled up inside me. Everything seemed too easy.
"Are you looking for this?"
A low, deep voice rang out from behind me, startling me. The USB drive in my hand fell, hitting the floor with a dry, sharp sound. I turned around, facing Shen Lin Zhou's dark eyes. He stood there. I don't know when he appeared. His gaze was calm, yet so cold it sent shivers down my spine. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My mind went blank. My heart pounded. It was over. This time, there really was no turning back. He stepped forward, bending down to pick up the USB drive. His movements were slow, but carried an invisible pressure. "Jiang Wan," he called my name, each word clear. "How do you intend to explain this?" I took a step back, but my back hit the table. There was no escape. In that moment, I realized all secrets, perhaps, were no longer secrets. I stood frozen, my back pressed against the cold edge of the table, feeling cornered. Shen Lin Zhou's gaze wasn't harsh, but it was that very calmness that frightened me. If he were angry, perhaps I would know how to handle it. But now, he just looked at me, waiting, and that made it even harder for me to tell a complete lie. My throat tightened, my mind racing to find a plausible excuse. But all justification seemed weak against that gaze. The system remained silent, offering me no hints. I clenched my fists, my fingernails almost digging into my palms, then suddenly clutched my stomach and crouched down. "Ah, it hurts," I groaned, trying to act it out. A clumsy act, but at this moment I had no other choice. Shen Lin Zhou's expression changed instantly. He quickly stepped forward, bending down to support me. "Where does it hurt?" His voice deepened, carrying a hint of genuine concern. I paused for a second. Just a second, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. "My stomach. I guess I didn't eat anything this morning." I stammered. In my heart, I apologized to him 100 times. Sorry for deceiving him. Sorry for making him worry.
He didn't ask any further questions, directly picking me up. His movements were so decisive, I didn't even have time to react. To the hospital, he said briefly to his assistant outside, then led me out of the office. Sitting in the car, I didn't dare look up. A feeling of guilt welled up inside me. I knew I'd just escaped a terrible fate, but the price I'd pay would likely be high. When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor diagnosed me with only mild gastritis. I lay on the bed, staring at the stark white ceiling, my heart a tangled mess. Part of me wanted to breathe a sigh of relief that it was over, but part of me worried about what would come next. Shenlin Zhou sat beside me, silently peeling an apple. The small knife glided across the peel, each stroke neat and even, just like him. The atmosphere between us became strange. No longer tense as before, but much heavier. "Why did you take it?" he suddenly asked, without looking at me. I bit my lip, not answering. "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I can't. If I told you about the system, about how I'm just a transmigrator, would you believe me? Or would you think I'm making it up?" He cut a small piece of apple and held it to my lips. "Eat." His voice was as calm as usual, but I sensed a thin layer of emotion hidden beneath it. I ate slowly, my heart heavy. After a while, he continued, his voice deeper. "That USB is empty." I froze, my eyes wide. "Huh?" Something exploded in my head. So I risked everything, just to get an empty USB? He put down the knife and leaned closer. The distance between us shortened so quickly that I couldn't adapt. "Jiangwan," he called my name, each word clear. "What exactly are you hiding from me?" My heart pounded wildly. His gaze was no longer cold, but a deep, scrutinizing one, as if trying to see through everything I was hiding. Before I could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then stood up to answer. The voice on the other end was weak, tinged with sobs. Lin Shi. "Lin Zhou, can I see you for a moment?" Her voice trembled. He was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "Okay." Short and decisive. I lay in bed, watching his back as he left the hospital room. An indescribable emptiness spread through my chest. I knew clearly that she still held a place in his heart. Even though he treated me differently now, the past couldn't be easily erased. "See?" The system's voice rang out cold. "The plot can't be changed. The one he loves is still the female protagonist." I closed my eyes, not responding. A sharp pain shot through my chest, not from the illness, but from an emotion I refused to acknowledge. "Complete the final mission," the system continued, its voice devoid of emotion. "Injure yourself, then blame Lin Shi." I chuckled softly, but it was a bitter laugh. "Dream on," I whispered. Immediately, an electric current coursed through my body, causing me to convulse in pain. It felt like every nerve was being torn apart. I bit my lip, trying not to scream. "Warning. Disobeying orders will result in extermination." I trembled, curled up on the bed, cold sweat soaking my shirt. In that moment, I suddenly realized this battle wasn't just between me and the plot. It was also between me and my own fate. The pain caused by the system gradually subsided, leaving my body limp as if all my strength had been drained. I lay motionless on the hospital bed, my breath ragged, my head spinning. Just then, the door burst open. A figure rushed in, a hurried voice calling, "Wan Wan." I opened my eyes slightly and saw Song Xin Yan, the childhood friend who had always silently supported the original owner. His face was full of worry, his eyes red as if he had just run a long distance. Before I could react, he took my hand. "How are you? Why are you in the hospital?" His genuine concern made my heart sink. I was about to pull my hand away, but before I could, a blast of cold air hit me. Without turning around, I knew who it was. Shenlin Zhou stood in the doorway, his eyes dark, fixed on the hand gripping mine.
The atmosphere instantly froze. "You're still in contact with him." His voice was low, but filled with suppressed anger. I frantically pulled my hand away. "It's not what you think." But before I could finish my explanation, he stepped forward, grabbed Song Shinyan by the collar, and pulled him forcefully. "Get out." Just one word, as cold as a knife. Song Shinyan refused to back down, his gaze meeting mine directly. "You don't deserve her." The tension was palpable. I panicked, wanting to stand up and stop him, but my legs gave way the moment they touched the ground, and I fell forward. A strong arm caught me just in time. Shen Linzhou held me tightly in his arms, but when he touched my wrist, his expression suddenly changed. His gaze lingered on the faint red mark caused by the system. "What's this?" His voice was hoarse. I forced a smile. I accidentally scratched myself, but his eyes showed disbelief. He lifted me up, turning to Song Shinyan coldly. "My wife needs rest." His words were decisive, giving the other party no chance to retort. The door closed, leaving only the two of us in the room. He gently placed me on the bed, his movements much gentler than before. His hand touched my wrist, very lightly, as if afraid of hurting me. "Jiangwan, how many things are you hiding from me?" His voice was so low it was almost a whisper. My nose stung. I turned away, not daring to look at him. "If one day I disappear, will you miss me?" The question came out unintentionally. His arm tightened. "You wouldn't dare." Two simple words, yet as heavy as a vow. He lifted my chin, his gaze deep, then leaned down and gently kissed my lips. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but enough to make my heart race. Just then the door opened. "Mommy!" Shen Junyan ran in, carrying a thermos. His voice trembled. "Aunt Liu made porridge for you." I chuckled, hugging him close, a warm feeling spreading through me. That night, after he fell asleep, Shen Linzhou hugged me from behind. "There's a party tomorrow, come with me." I nodded, but a sense of unease welled up inside me. I knew it. This was a crucial scene in the original story. The place where I would push Lin Shi down the stairs. The party the next day was extravagant and lively. The lights were dazzling, the music melodious. Everything was so perfectly artificial. When I saw Lin Shi standing beside Gu Yan Chen, my heart tightened. The system immediately sounded, "Execute mission." I clenched my fists. "No," I whispered. "Failure to comply will result in being wiped out." Just as I was still hesitating, Lin Shi approached. "I have something to say privately." Her gaze was completely different from its previous gentleness. I was wary, but I followed her. Standing near the stairs, she lowered her voice. "You are not the real Jiang Wan." I was stunned. "Because I am also a transmigrator." Her smile was cold. Before I could process it, the system frantically sounded the alarm. The next second, she grabbed my hand, feigning a loss of balance. I instinctively held on. In that instant, a powerful force pulled us both back. "Have you finished acting?" Shen Linzhou's voice rang out. I turned my head and saw him standing there, his eyes chillingly cold. Lin Shi's face instantly changed color, and she threw herself into his arms. "She wants to kill me!" I panicked. "No!" A sharp pain exploded in my head. The world went dark. Before losing consciousness, I only managed to see his panicked face. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Shen Junyan held me, his eyes red and swollen. "Mom." I stroked his head, my heart softening. Strangely, the system was silent. The door opened, and Shen Linzhou walked in. He looked noticeably thinner, with prominent dark circles under his eyes. "You're awake." His voice was hoarse. He took my hand, as if afraid I would disappear. "Lin Shi?" I asked. "She's been arrested," he replied curtly. "She's a commercial spy." I was stunned. The plot had completely changed. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "Nian Nian and I, both heard your inner thoughts. I was speechless. Shen Junyan nodded, his eyes glistening. For a long time now. My face flushed. They knew everything? All of it? There was no other way. I told them everything. About transmigrating into the book, about the system, about the forced missions. When I finished, the room fell silent. Shen Junyan hugged me tightly. I don't want you to disappear, Mom. I squeezed him, tears falling. Shen Linzhou stood up and took out a USB drive. Because of this? He plugged it into the computer. The screen displayed data, evidence of the Gu Group's illegal activities. A trap, he said. They wanted to use you to harm me. I was speechless. From beginning to end, it was all a conspiracy. He held me close. Even without the system, you won't disappear. I looked at him, my voice trembling. If this is a story, can we have a happy ending? He placed his hand on my lips. This moment is real. The days that followed gradually returned to peace. But then, the system reappeared. Final mission, kill Shen Linzhou. I was speechless. That night I cried in my office. When he found out, I didn't hide it anymore. It told me to kill you. My voice trembled. He was silent, then opened a drawer and handed me a gun. Trust me. He placed my hand on his chest. The wall behind him opened, revealing the world's source code. Shoot, he said. I trembled as I pulled the trigger. A burst of light. The system emitted a distorted sound, then disappeared. Everything returned to silence. He held me tightly. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. It turned out he always knew. Always secretly looking for a way to break the system. The door opened, and Shen Junyan rubbed his eyes and walked in. Mom and Dad! I laughed, hugging my child close. From that day on, we lived a new life. No more scripts, no more predetermined fates. Only us. We wrote our own story.